Welcome everybody to our third webinar on .au Direct, Australia's newest domain namespace. I'm Michael Lewis, Outers Industry Relations Manager. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm coming to you from today, the original home of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, and would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Please note this session has been recorded. On the 24th of March this year, Outer launched Australia's newest namespace, .au Direct. The launch followed extensive community consultation over 2015 to 2019, including public consultation papers, face-to-face forums, online workshops and a survey. The overwhelming feedback received from stakeholders was in favour of .au Direct being launched for the benefit of the .au domain and Australian internet users. Over 2020 and 2021, Outer planned for the new namespace and announced its introduction in August 2021 and launched the new namespace on 24 March 2022. To update you on .au Direct, we are joined today by Outer's CEO, Rosemary Sinclair. Following Rosemary's update, Outer's Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Bruce Tonkin, will provide further details on the priority allocation process that closes on 20 September. Both Rosemary and Bruce are happy to take your questions, so please put them in the Zoom Q&A tab. Let's jump right in. Rosemary, over to you.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome everybody once again. We're really pleased that there is such strong community interest in .au Direct, and we're glad to have an opportunity today to provide a further update. Before getting to .au Direct, I'd like to provide a little bit of context about the .au domain, of which, of course, .au Direct is the newest member of our namespace suite. The .au domain is now the 9th largest country code top-level domain in the world, with over 3.6 million domain names under management. We've moved ahead of Italy and sit just behind France. The .au domain name system, or DNS, as we like to call it, all day, every day, handles on average up to 3 billion queries each day. These queries are people accessing the websites of essential government services, Australian businesses and community organisations, sending emails, studying online, making medical appointments, all the things that we do as we live our daily digital lives. The volume and essential nature of the DNS shows why .au was designated critical infrastructure by the Australian government. And to keep pace with technological change and community expectations, we need to keep innovating. Which brings us to the focus of today's webinar. Outer's purpose is to unlock positive social and economic value for Australians through an open, free, secure and global internet. To support that goal, in March this year, we launched .au Direct, Australia's newest namespace. The benefits of .au Direct are that it allows the registration of shorter, more memorable domain names and provides registrants with a choice of new names that in themselves are easier to type and display on mobile devices. Importantly, anyone who has an Australian presence or who can establish a connection to Australia, such as an Australian trademark, is eligible to register for a .au Direct name. These rules are designed to give greater flexibility while maintaining the integrity of the .au domain that is so important to all of us, and keeping .au domain as recognisably Australian. So that means .au Direct is available to a wide range of potential registrants, including businesses who want to create a microsite for marketing or other purposes, micro businesses taking their first foray from an online marketplace to their own established web presence, associations establishing a new presence, and individuals who want to use their own name for branding or business purposes. The new namespace option complements existing namespaces such as com.au and net.au. And since launch, we've seen more than 200,000 .au direct registrations. This growth remains strong, with .au direct registrations now making up almost 15% of new registrations in the .au domain. We've seen strong take-up by all sectors, including businesses and not-for-profit groups, and we're excited to see the new and innovative ways this namespace is used to drive economic and social value for Australia. .au Direct, which appears as orange on this chart, is now the third largest namespace in .au, having overtaken org.au. We expect that it will overtake net.au in popularity and size of names registered sometime later this year. As you can see, .com.au remains Australia's most popular namespace at nearly 3.1 million registrations. We don't expect that .au Direct will overtake com.au, as it is designed as a complementary namespace. Drilling down a bit further into .au Direct now makes up nearly 6% of total .au domain names under management. That is 6% of the current 3.6 million .au domain names. Comparing this on a global scale, .uk and .nz both launched direct namespaces in 2014. These namespaces now stand at 14 and 20% of their total names under management. Given this comparison, we're pleased with the progress and growth of .au Direct after only 4 months, and consider that recognition that the community sees good value in the new namespace. Now, of course, we didn't get here overnight. The journey of .au Direct follows a long and considered consultation with the community, along with a number of awareness-raising activities. The process began in 2015, and between 2015 and 2019, we held 4 public community consultations and surveyed 97,000 .au registrants. The feedback received was overwhelming in favour of proceeding with the launch of this new namespace. We've also had very close engagement with government, industry, small business and media stakeholders, as well as our registrar partners, all since the early stages and throughout the process. And we've been really pleased with the help that our stakeholders have given us in raising awareness via their channels and networks, some of which you can see on the slide. Since announcing the intention to launch in August 2021, AEDT has also undertaken significant awareness raising, including a national awareness campaign, which started in February this year. The campaign continues to run on TV, radio, billboard, and digital channels. You might have seen some of our content on TV during the Commonwealth Games and other primetime slots this year. We have billboard signage at prominent locations around the country, such as the Flinders and Swanston Street intersection in Melbourne and Sydney Airport. In addition to this, there are a range of radio ads on stations around Australia and digital channels, including Facebook, YouTube and Spotify. Our accredited registrars have also undertaken their own awareness campaigns and engaged in direct communications with individual registrants. Overall, it's been a 7-year journey of awareness raising and consultation, which continues today. We've been really pleased with the high rates of take-up of .au Direct, but we're still looking at other ways we can reach interested stakeholders to raise awareness of the benefits and options of a .au Direct. So please reach out to the outer team if you've got any suggestions for other channels that we might use. We'd be really pleased to hear from you. Let me now pass over to Bruce, who will take you through the priority allocation process. This process allows registrants of .au names licensed before the launch of .au Direct priority to apply for the matching .au Direct name. Bruce will take you through the key details and criteria for this process. And after his presentation, we'll be really happy to take your questions. So please continue to put them in the Zoom Q&A tab. Over to you, Bruce.
Thank you, Rosemary. Let's go to the next slide. So as Rosemary's mentioned, the process for providing priority to existing registrants of .au was developed through a community process in sort of 2017, 2018. One of the questions there was how long would we keep the priority allocation process, and the period which got the most community acceptance was a 6-month period from the 24th of March to the 20th of September. Just a reminder in the next slide. So this is the key dates. The priority period ends on the 20th of September, and any names for which there's been no application will be released on the Australian time on the 4th of October. And that translates in UTC time for international people, which is the 3rd of October at 2100 UTC time. Next slide. So the process to apply for a matching .au name is typically a 2-step process. The first step is to get a priority token. So for every name in the registry as of the 24th of March, a unique pair of codes was created, which we call the priority token. It consists of a contact ID starting with M and a password basically starting with the letters AU. You'll need that password to be able to apply for your name with any of the registrars, and you can retrieve that password by going to the priority.outer.org.au page, typing in your domain name, and an email link will be sent to you where you can retrieve your token. If your email address is not up to date in the registry, then simply go to your registrar and update the email address at the registrar, and then you'll be able to retrieve your token. Once you have the token, you can take that to your current domain name provider, which could be a registrar or a reseller of a registrar. If your current reseller doesn't support .au Direct, then you can use any of the registrars that are listed on our website at getyour.au, and the bottom of that page has a large list of registrars that can provide support. And then finally, if you want to verify that your application has been processed, then you can check the priority status at the priority status tool link. So that's the process, and we're always available to assist you if you're having trouble with that process. We've noticed recently there's been a few announcements put out by various bodies sort of suggesting that you need to register .au Direct for to prevent cybercrime. I thought it was worthwhile just providing some actual statistics on cybercrime in .au. And the reality is that in the .au namespace, we have a very low rate of cybercrime internationally. If we take the requests that we've had from police forces in Australia, those requests relate to 0.002% of names. We also take DNS abuse feeds, and this is feeds from a range of international service providers that report names that have been involved in phishing or malware or email spam. And those feeds basically relate to 0.03% of names in the registry. So these are tiny percentages, they're barely measurable. And with respect to the DNS abuse feeds, most of it is not deliberately malicious registrations, it's actually mostly hacked small business websites. And so the best thing that small businesses can do to protect themselves against cybercrime is actually to make sure that the software they're running on their website is the most up-to-date version. The reason why we have such a low level of cybercrime in .au is that we have 4 levels of protection. The first level is that registrars must validate all registrations before they are registered, and that basically validates that the person applying for the domain name has a genuine Australian presence. It could be that they're a registered business or a registered incorporated association, or they provide a form of ID such as a driver's license or passport. Outer also does checks every day after registration. We look for patterns where we know that there are deliberate attempts to register names in breach of the rules, and we catch typically banking scams in those daily post-registration checks. Thirdly, we pay for DNS abuse feeds from about 20 different organisations around the world, and check those each day for any names that include .au names. And then finally, we have a robust complaints process where anybody can raise a complaint and we will process that complaint. It's very rare that those complaints relate to cybercrime. Usually the complaints are on the basis that somebody has a name that the person complaining would like to have. On the next slide, the other area that some people may hear about is that it's important to register their domain name and .au to protect their brand. The first point here is that the way the .au namespace is designed is so that multiple organisations can have domain names that match their name in the namespace. So if we look at ABC as an example, abcnet.au is the TV station. ABC.org.au, I believe that's a religious group. abcedu.au is an educational organisation. And abcid.au, where ABC is the initials of an Australian citizen. These names have existed in the namespace for many years, and neither of these names cause any issue for the other registrants. And so by opening up .au Direct, we're really opening up an opportunity for organisations that have not been able to register a name in .com.au particularly, and they're able to get a good name in .au that matches their organisation's name. When considering protecting your brand, and this is particularly those that have had .com.au names for many years, this is, I guess, a priority order of things you might want to consider. By far the best way of protecting your brand is actually to register a trademark with IP Australia. That gives you legal protection under Australian law, gives you access to dispute resolution under our dispute resolution policies for .au names. And we get about 30 of those disputes a year, again, really low percentages. But it also, more importantly, gives you access to international dispute resolution in .com and other namespaces. The next area that you would consider would be registering in .com. That has no eligibility or allocation rules. Obviously, a lot of people can register in .com from around the world. So if you're trying to protect your brand, try and obtain your name in .com. .co for Colombia, again, often not many people realise that it stands for Colombia. Most people see it as an abbreviation for .com. Again, has many registrations and people will try and register brands there. .net.au is a well-established alternative to .com.au. And then finally, you can also register clearly in .au Direct. Generally, what I would advise people, if you feel that the brand that you've had in .com.au, that you felt the need to protect it in .net.au, then it's probably a good rule of thumb to protect your name in .au Direct. But by and large, we think cybercrime and brand protection are not the main reasons to register in .au Direct. The main reasons are that you can get an additional name that's shorter. It's ideal for a short email address, I use bruce@outer.au, for example, as a short email address, and ideal for if you're advertising on billboards and other media where the shorter name can be helpful. Next slide. Over back to you, I think, Michael, for any questions.
Thanks, Bruce. In fact, it's just back to me very briefly, just to remind everybody that we've now got about 20 minutes for questions. Mike's been keeping an eye on the chat and various other sources of questions, and he'll take us through the questions that we've received. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Rosemary, and thanks, Bruce, for that update. Rosemary, to kick things off, I had a question about the use of .au Direct for small business and why a business might choose to register a .au Direct name over a different namespace. You able to take us through some of the benefits?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Look, I think there are a range of reasons, and we're starting to see them. As Bruce was just saying, you know, one of the advantages is just that it's shorter. And when we live our lives through our mobile devices, as we're all doing these days, it's amazing how valuable it is to cut 4 keystrokes out of the whole process. We also think that some businesses might like to try new products and services, and they'll use the .au Direct as a way of launching new parts of their business. And the other area I'd say, and we've started to see some of this, is that very new businesses that are just emerging now have an opportunity to have an online web presence, which they didn't have before. And we've seen about somewhere around 25,000 tiny little businesses and organisations register in .au. And we think that's one of the biggest opportunities, you know, as the economy becomes a digital economy, enabling people to have a choice of their own web presence where they control what's going on and can use that website as they see fit. We think that's a really important opportunity in a digital economy. Thanks.
Thanks, Rosemary. And Bruce, the next one I might throw to you. We had a question about if .au Direct names can be used for email addresses. And you're on mute at the moment, Bruce. It can't be a webinar unless someone's unless that line is said. So,
yep, yes, they certainly can. So as I said, mentioned earlier, I've already created an email address, a short form address. My normal email address is bruce.tonkin@outer.org.au, which is not the easiest to type on a mobile phone. And so I also have a short form address, which is simply bruce@outer.au. And I've been using that as a test name that I can check with other websites to see that they accept email addresses in that format. And so far, I've yet to find a website that doesn't accept it. So yes, I can definitely say that it's supported in email.
Terrific. That's some thorough testing, Bruce. Thank you. Rose, we had a question about the consultation process for where we arrived to with that with .au Direct and the length of time for the priority allocation process. Are you able to take us a bit more through how Outer arrived at this point and the journey?
Yes, no, happy to do that. And before I do that, Mike, I'll just back up a little bit to explain to people that Outer is the administrator, pardon me, of the .au domain. And that administrator word is actually quite a rich word, which reflects the fact that the internet is governed. So the rules around names and technical protocols and all of that is governed through multi-stakeholder processes. The key with multi-stakeholder processes is that everyone's voice is an equal voice round the table. So businesses, community organisations, technical experts, the research community, academics, government, not-for-profit organisations, everyone has an equal voice, and the decision-making process is very, very transparent. So in terms of consultation around the .au Direct, the process goes back to 2015. And in 2015, the question was whether to have .au Direct as a namespace in .au domain. And after a number of public consultations and reflection by an independent names policy panel that was pulled together, the decision was made to go ahead with .au Direct. Those materials are on our website, able to be read to this very day by anybody who's interested in that bit of history. You can even see the in that report a small number of members of that panel dissenting and saying that they didn't think it was a good idea to launch .au Direct. But the vast majority of that panel said, yes, .au Direct is a good idea. That was the first step. The second step was, okay, we're going to have .au Direct, but how will we do it? So what needs to happen with the policies that are in place? How do those need to be reformed? And then how is this new namespace going to be introduced so that existing holders of domain names are not disadvantaged, but new opportunities are provided for people to come into the .au domain. So that process meant that a policy panel was again formed in 2017, and that policy panel did its work from February 2018 to February 2019 in terms of the consultation process, and then reported in March of 2019. And that policy panel was quite specific on the subject of the 6 months. They took soundings from a number of participants. They reflected on international experience. They really thought about this matter very, very deeply. And so it was in that 2019 report, there is a specific recommendation about 6 months. That all of that was then consulted on further during public consultations towards the end of 2019. And it was after that that the decision was taken by the board to introduce .au Direct, to adopt the implementation approach that had been recommended in terms of a priority allocation period, and to make that period 6 months. Along the way, of course, we have continued to monitor the international experience of our peers, and in particular consulting with New Zealand and the UK, they were very clear on the 6 months being an appropriate period, recommending, of course, a significant amount of communications, which we have seen through our registrar channel, associations and other stakeholders, and OUDA itself. But that's a brief description, Mike, of the consultation process around .au Direct. And as I say, all those materials are available on the OUDA website, which is in itself an example of the transparent multi-stakeholder processes that are used around the world to govern the development and innovation of the internet. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary. We had a question come in that I might just answer quickly, just about what will the ending be? Will it be .au or .au Direct? The namespace is called .au Direct, but it will still end in .au. So as Bruce was saying before, with OUDA, for example, is registered ouda.au. We also have ouda.org.au. So it's it will still end in AU, not .au Direct. Bruce, we had a question coming about the fees for applying for a .au Direct name. Are you able to take us through that and a bit more detail about the application process again, and probably also for new names as well? And I will just say we did have a question about whether we'll provide some instructions on registering for .au Direct. I'm happy to provide a link for that too, that I'll put up in the Q&A. But over to you, Bruce.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, in terms of cost, the wholesale price, which is the price that registrars pay for a .au direct, is the same as a .com.au name. And the pricing ranges, you can get it for basically for the price of sort of a takeaway lunch, up to higher fees where there's higher levels of service involved. But in simple terms, it's about the price of a hamburger or something for lunch.
And you able to just take us through again, Bruce, the application process of how you create a new name for .au direct?
Yes, so two processes really. If you just want to register a new name in .au direct, it's the same as registering a name in .com.au. You simply search for an available name using the search tools that all registrar sites provide. And once you find an available name, you just register it. If you're a business, you would provide your ABN information. And if you're a citizen, then you would provide your driver's license or passport, and there's some other forms of ID. If you're an existing registrar, so you have typically a .com.au or a .net.au, then you need to retrieve a priority token, which is used to identify that you're an existing registrant. And once you have the priority token, you can then go to your existing domain name registrar where you have your current domain name, provide that priority token to them, and they will apply for the .au direct name on your behalf.
Thanks, Bruce. And just carrying on that theme, which is touch upon how the different priority categories will work and how names are given priority. I had a few questions coming about that, and particularly if there's more than one organisation applying for priority.
Yeah, in most cases, so in more than 95% of the cases, there is only one matching name. In 5% of the cases, though, there are matching names, typically between .com.au and .net.au. And then in that situation, if the names have been registered prior to 2018, they all have equal priority, and the parties need to reach an agreement. So if one party had a .com.au, one party had a .net.au, and they've been registered for more than 4 years each, then they would have to reach an agreement to see who got the .au name. In other cases where the names have been registered since 2018, then the domains are allocated basically, well, the priority is in order of the creation date. So if someone created typically the .com.au name first, so they registered it in 2019, and then some different organisation registered a .net.au name in 2020, then the .com.au registrant will have priority in that situation.
Thanks, Bruce. And Rosemary, we had a couple of questions coming about EDU names and organisations that might hold EDU names, and why they might choose to keep using their EDU over a .au direct. Are you able to touch on the benefits of or why .edu exists as a namespace, and why businesses may choose to keep using that if they're an education organisation?
Well, the first thing to say, Mike, is that we've never really seen .au direct as an either or choice. So we would expect, as with com.au, our expectation is that people will keep using their com.au. So educational institutions, we would absolutely expect that they would keep using edu.au because of what it signifies to the Australian public. Australian consumers and indeed international students have really come to understand the value of the trusted .au domain, and within that the value of different namespaces such as edu.au or gov.au or com.au. And as Bruce was outlining, this isn't just happenstance. It's a result of really careful crafting through the multi-stakeholder community of rules for the different namespaces, and then work by AUDA as the domain administrator to make sure that those rules apply and are respected. So our compliance activity, our audit activity and the like is all about making sure that the integrity of the .au domain remains high, so that users of the .au domain can be really confident and trust that domain. So we would expect that edu.au will remain a very trusted namespace run by the Education Registrar, ESA, and indeed we have an advisory committee, the edu.au advisory committee, that gives the outer board specialist advice about developments in the edu.au space. So we see all of that continuing. .au Direct provides an additional opportunity for the reasons that we were outlining before, in terms of innovation, in terms of ease of access, and in terms of ease on mobile devices. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary. Bruce, we've had a question about updating business names and what people do if they've changed the name of their business and their business details. It's obviously very important for people to keep their contact details and business names up to date for outer to reach out to them, but also for eligibility purposes. You able to take us through a bit about that? And mute again, Bruce. That's 2 strikes.
Certainly, we have a process where to be eligible for a domain name, particularly in .com.au and .net.au, you need to be registered as a commercial organisation with an Australian government body. Usually that means on the ABN register or through ASIC if it's a company. But what we have found is that a lot of organisations change their company structure. So people might go from a sole trader to forming a family trust, or they might then form a company, and then maybe they change accountants, and the new accountant's got different tax advice and says it's better to be a trust. So we, over sort of 20 years of a domain life cycle, we often see people go from sole trader to trust to company to trust to sole trader. And the important thing there is to hold a domain name license, you do need to have a currently registered business entity. Where we find that that's not the case, then we ask the end user to provide documentation which explains what changes they've made to their business structure, so that we can update that information in the registry.
Thanks, Bruce. We also just had another question about what happens after the close of the priority allocation date and when names will be available for registration. Were you able to update us on when that will
people have up until the 20th of September to apply for their matching name. After that, if we have domain names where there's been no application, we will release them. They will all be released in Australian time on the 4th of October. And in the period between the 20th of September and the 4th of October, you will be able to check the status of a name through the Whois service. And if the name is going to be released on the 4th of October, it will come back with a status which basically says for release. And so you will be able to typically go to registrars and put in a pre-order, and then registrars will process those pre-orders on the 4th of October.
Thanks, Bruce. And while we're on a roll on email addresses again, we've had another question about when you do email someone at their .au direct address, whether it will redirect to the .com or whether it's set up as a new address.
Yeah, typically as an initial thing, what most people will do when they register a .au direct is create a redirect at the web layer. So that allows if I type in outer.au, for example, it will redirect to outer.org.au. So most registrars will offer a service that's included in the price of registering the domain name that will do that. The other most common thing to do is to create an email alias. And again, registrars can help you with that. But basically what it would do is if someone, which is how I've got my email set up, if you send an email to Bruce at outer.au, it's just an alias, and the actual email will be sent to my mailbox address, which is bruce.tonkin@outer.org.au. So your registrar should be able to assist you with both setting up a website redirect and also an email redirect.
Thanks for that. We do have quite a few questions in the queue, and we are rapidly running out of time. So I will say that we'll get back to people who haven't been able to answer any questions shortly, but we'll try and get to as many as we can now before we wrap up. Rosemary, a question about brand protection. The AEDT processes that are currently in place, will they continue to cover .au Direct?
Yes, absolutely. And as Bruce was saying, AUDRP will remain in place. Our complaints process remains in place. The audits we do from time to time, if we're seeing something that doesn't look quite right post-registration, the work we're doing on DNS abuse, the work we're doing through our registrars in terms of validating Australian presence, all of those protections and processes remain in place for the whole .au domain. The introduction of the new namespace .au Direct doesn't interfere with any of that.
Terrific. Well, yes, it looks like we're now running out of time, Rosemary, so I might just pass back to you to wrap things up. And as I said, we'll try and get back to questions in writing after the webinar.
Yeah, and if I could just suggest, Mike, it might be useful to do a blog to take all the questions and write a blog that then can be publicly shared the way we're doing now in the verbal Q&A. But time is not our friend today, and we do need to draw the session to a close. I just wanted to thank you for your questions and participation, and again to ask you for your assistance in continuing to raise awareness through your networks. We've got a ton of material available on our website, or if you get in touch with us, we can support you. We're really here to help in any way we can, so just feel absolutely free to reach out. As we mentioned earlier, of course, .au registrants would have already received an email regarding the change from their registrar, and that email will have all the steps that you should take if you're interested in registering a new .au direct name. If you're interested in more information on the priority allocation process, that is also in that email or on our website, if you'd like to go there. Just a couple of mentions about members. If you haven't joined Outer as a member, I'd really ask you to consider signing up. That is the way that you can be among the first to hear about new developments in the .au domain. And we're very interested always in your thoughts and point of view. Membership is free and only takes a minute to complete. If you're an existing member, then the opportunity that we'd ask you to consider is transitioning to the new terms and conditions associated with AU membership. You would have received an email about that change. And again, the process is really, really easy and takes under a minute online. If you've got any questions about that, of course, we've got a contact up on the screen now, membership@outer.org.au. Finally, we've got a busy schedule of events coming up. On the 31st of August, we're in Perth, and we're really delighted about that. It's been quite a while since Outer's been in Perth. On the 21st of September, we've got a specialist webinar focused on the Internet of Things, and we're joined by the Internet of Things Alliance of Australia for that. We're supporting NetThing, which is Australia's multi-stakeholder internet governance forum. That's towards the end of October, and there are lots of details about all of those events on our website. So thank you again for your time and interest today. It's been really a terrific conversation with you. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much, everyone.